Well, last time we were looking at the book of James. We were thinking about temptation. And one of the things that we learned about temptation is that unequivocally, without any doubt, God does not tempt. Temptation does not come from God. God never sends or directly tempts us. And so if you've forgotten that, you can go back and listen to the sermon that we did a few weeks ago on James. But as we move to the next section of the book of James, as we look at James chapter 1, verse 17 and 18, what we're going to see here is what does God actually give us. So last week we looked at what God does not send, God does not tempt. And this week we're going to be looking at what is it that God sends to us? What is it that God gives to his people? What is it that God has done and is doing? And so that's what we're going to think about today. Because there is a danger. There's a very real danger in our thinking that we sometimes think, well, God is mighty and great and powerful, but he's sort of over there. God's somewhere, but he's not really here. It's a very dangerous thought to forget that God is active in this world. That our God does give his people great gifts, great blessings, great encouragements. Our God is not distant or far away, or he's not forgotten about us or deserted us or left us. The reality is our God is still at work. Do you believe that this morning? It should wake us up a little bit. It should challenge us in our thinking. This almighty, all-powerful God is still working. And now, currently in Wales, we do not live in revival days. We do not have hundreds and thousands of people queuing to come in like you had in the 1904 revivals. We don't have that. And yet, it is wrong to think for a single minute that God is not working out his plans and purposes in the exact same way. In revival days, what is God doing? He is working out his plans. In our days today, what is God doing? He is working out his plans. And what we're going to look at today is what our God is giving to us. What has God done for his people? How is God active and involved and engaged in our world today? And I just want to look at three very simple things that identify what God is doing, who God is, and what he is giving to those who have received the gift. And so my first point is really to think about and to reflect on the gifts that God has given. Because evil does not come from God. This section opens in verse 17. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. I don't think that could be more clear or more comprehensive. We've thought about temptation, and there's an element here that within ourselves, we are susceptible to temptation because in ourselves, it's not all good, is it? We heard a little bit of that from the children's talk this morning. That within me, within my sinful, human, fleshly heart, it's not all good. What comes from me is a reflection of me. And though we are people who know Jesus Christ and we are being sanctified, don't we feel it? That sometimes we do something or say something and we go, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I've done this. I can't believe I've hurt someone in that way. But with God, He is different from us. With us, in our dealings and with our actions and our interactions with people, what comes out from us is what is within us. But look at what comes from God. Every, not just one or two, but every good gift, every perfect gift is not from within, it's not from yourselves, it's not from your church leaders, it's not even from your family, but every good gift comes from above. There is an origin of what is good, and it comes from the one who is good. By His very nature and character, God is good. And so we read clearly and obviously that nothing in ourselves is perfect. Nothing in nature is perfect. Nothing in the people sitting around you is perfect. We know that, don't we? But every good gift comes from above. We are very hit and miss. But God is never weak. God is never failing. God is active, and He is a God who gives. One of the most remarkable things about the fact that all good gifts come from above is the fact that we have received what God has given. That God is a God who gives. He is a God who is at work in this world. He is a God who has not forgotten us or given up on us, but our sovereign Lord is working today. This very day, God is at work. And even on Monday morning, God is at work. Now let me begin with verse 17. That every gift comes from God. I think so often we have an issue as even as Christians in forgetting the fundamental principle that God is the real giver of what is good. Even as Christians, I think we can be so caught up in enjoying the blessings of God, enjoying the good things that God has given us, that we forget to acknowledge that God has given them to us. So often when we receive presents, maybe a birthday present, you open it up and you are so infatuated and overcome by the gift itself, you forget the love and care and attention of the one who's given the gift. I think that's something we need to be very aware of and cautious of. But every gift that is good, everything that is perfect and pure, all of it originates from God. Now that is a very controversial statement, and many people would disagree, and many people would be angry at the concept that we can say that everything good originates from God. Because it does bring up the question, what is a good gift? What is it that is good? What are some of the good gifts in my life? And I'm very aware that for some people here this morning, you might be in the depths of depression or despair or sorrow or difficulty. And you might be asking yourself, where are these good gifts in my life? In what I'm going through, in the hardship of my life, in my stress and struggles. I can see a lot of bad and difficulty, but I'm struggling to identify the good. What are the good gifts that God gives? What is the gift of God? Well, personally, I think that chocolate is a very good gift. And so, if I was to receive a gift of chocolate, I would humbly accept. However much chocolate you've got, I will accept. Because I think chocolate is a very good gift. However, in a few years' time, after many years of you giving me lots and lots of chocolate, my dentist might have a different opinion about how good this chocolate is or was. When I go to the doctor for health concerns, they might have a very different opinion about whether all of that chocolate was actually a good gift. One Christian commentator says, if we are to understand the gift that God has given us, we must view what is good in light of eternity. What God gives that is good must be viewed by what is eternal, by what lasts. What is good now and what will be good forever. Because chocolate appears to be good to begin with, doesn't it? But there are consequences from having too much of it. But if we think about the gift that God has given us, which lasts, which is always good, which remains good, what a great encouragement for us. I think one of the biggest examples of this is probably the lottery. The number of people that have won the lottery, wouldn't that be great? And being a multi-millionaire. All your problems gone. All your worries gone. The only problem you've got if you've won the lottery is finding a wallet big enough to hold all that money. You've got no issues, have you, if you win the lottery? But what do we see time and time again? People that think that winning the lottery is a gift, is a good thing. Many of them fall into depression. Many of them find that their friends are not actually their real friends, and they can't trust the people around them. Many people lose and squander all the money that they have. There have been many lottery winners who've said, if I could do one thing again, it would be never to play the lottery. That's after winning it, because they've realized that this gift that they thought was good, this one thing they were pinning all their hopes on, fulfilling and satisfying and lasting, what they have found is it is lacking after time. There have been negatives. But what God gives is good. The gifts that God gives are always good. They will last the test of eternity. And I just want to mention, because we're looking here, it says, from above coming down. And I'm very aware that I am preaching the sermon between two giant Christmas trees with all the flashing lights. And so I want to make the point that obviously this Christmas, what is it that we are going to remember as a church? We are going to remember the one who came down from above. We are going to remember a gift that is always good. Something that will last the test and time of eternity. A gift which is infinite in its beauty and glory. For God himself, in the person of Jesus Christ, has come down into the world, taking on flesh, to live the perfect life that we have all failed to live. And without blemish or fault, he lived holy and pure and blameless. And then willingly, the God-man, Jesus Christ, gave himself up, even to die upon a cross. Not just bearing physical pain, but he died for my wrongdoing, for my sin, The one who had no sin took on my sin and paid the penalty for what I have done wrong. And now he has risen again on the third day, and he has ascended into the seat of the Father. And all who come and trust in Jesus Christ will be forgiven, will be accepted. And the triumph that Jesus Christ had over death is my triumph over death. I share in the victory of Jesus Christ. This is the ultimate gift that any of us can be given, isn't it? When you think about everything that God has given you, and there's huge amounts when you think about common grace, all the good things that God has given you, that's wonderful. But there is nothing like Jesus Christ. There is no gift that is greater than him. There is nothing that God has given or could give that is better than you being reunited with him. There is nothing greater than that. And you might be thinking, I don't have much in life. I haven't achieved much in life. I haven't acquired much. I don't have a legacy. I don't even have my health anymore. I don't have money. But God has given us Jesus. And if you are accepting and trusting in him, there is no gift that can compare with that. We heard it in the children's talk, 2 Corinthians 9, verse 15. Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. Our God has given us so much more than we deserve. And yet some people reject the gift. A gift that is good. A gift that is perfect. A gift that is good now and good for the whole of eternity. Do you know the greatest gift that has ever been given? The second thing we learn from this passage is an insight into the person and character of the one who has given the gift. And so my second point is the giver. The one who has given such a gift. Because this passage makes a few things crystal clear about who the God that we worship today is. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of change. What we see here is that in the light and in the dark, God is the same. Our sovereign God is unchanging, unwavering in his nature and his character. This phrase, the Father of lights, is a really interesting and unique description of God. The first thing here is that he is described as a father, as one who has given life into everything, as one to whom precedes life. He came before life. Before anything was, God was. He is the Father. He is the life giver. But also what we see here is, some people say that there's a reference here to creation. And I think there's a strong argument to be made for that. There's a strong argument to be made that verse 17 is talking about the God who gives life. He has created all things. He has created the sun and he sustains it. And there's a lot of truth behind that, but I think it evidently goes so much further than that. Because this great God, this Father of light, is also the God who brings spiritual life, who makes us anew, who causes us to be born again. This God is not just a God who created everything. This is the God who created everything and then brings saving life, salvation. The great God who said, "Let there be light," and there was. The Almighty God. We sing a hymn, don't we? Indescribable. And it says, "Who imagined the sun and gave source to its light?" Our God is a vast creator God. Before time, until the end of time, and after, God does not change. He remains the same. The sun is a constant in our lives. This illustration of the Father of lights, the sun is a constant. In Wales, it's constantly not there, but it's constant nonetheless, isn't it? The sun is constant. It will rise and it will set. We know the direction it will rise, and we know the direction it will set. We can depend on the reliability of the sun. The way that God has ordered creation is in such a way that it has an order and a dependency. We trust that the sun will rise. Now, Matthew Henry certainly agreed that this imagery of light displays and reveals the consistency of God. In the same way, you can be sure that the sun rises and sets, so our God is consistent, dependable, unchanging. And you know what? He is more sure. He is more certain than the sun. That thing that every day of our lives has gone up and gone down. Our God is more constant and more certain than that. Christian, as we go through difficulties and hardships in our lives, who is there to trust in? Who else is there to throw yourselves at other than a God who is constant, who is ever the same, who does not change, who does not alter? Our God is the same. And God, who has given us such a great gift, continues to dispense his goodness to us time and time again. Because it's great to know that God has given us a gift. That's lovely, isn't it? But what if he ever changed his mind? That's the worry, isn't it? That yes, God has given us lots, but what if he ever takes it back? Well, what James is addressing thousands of years ago is that God does not change. And thousands of years after James wrote this letter, God has not changed. He remains the same. The one who gave the gift, the giver of the gift, is a constant, dependable God who will always remain the same, who never changes. But I know what some of you will be thinking. Some of you might be thinking, but Sam, I don't feel like the good gift-giving God is always present in the same way. We know that God does not change. I saw nodding, I saw yeses and a few amens. Brilliant. We know God does not change, but sometimes we have to admit that he feels far away. Sometimes we have to admit that he's not always as close to us as he has been in the past. We have to admit that sometimes this giver, who is meant to be a constant, is sometimes, he feels so far away. And that is an experience of all Christians. We all experience in our Christian lives time when we know our Savior is so close, and times when he feels so far away? But this is what Richard Baxter says, and I've changed it slightly because I've tried to modernize the language. But this is what Richard Baxter says about this feeling of constancy. As the sun is the same in its nature and influence, though sometimes the earth and clouds conceal the sun, which makes it seem to us like the sun is varying. Now, we know that a lot in Wales, don't we? The sun is still there, but the clouds conceal it. The clouds cover it. And so the sun still remains there, but the effects of the sun have been changed or altered in some way. And this is what Baxter continues to say. Sometimes it looks different. Sometimes the temperature is different. And sometimes we can't see the sun at all. But the sun has not changed. Change is not part of the sun's nature. So it is with God, who is unchangeable. And our changes and shadows are not from mutability or shadowy alternatives to do with God, but they come from ourselves. Well, Richard Baxter is really powerfully describing and summing up is that we know the sun shines and shines bright. But there are things that get in the way of that. And when it feels like God is not present, when it feels like the giver of all that is good is so far away, well, Richard Baxter's argument is that God's not gone anywhere. God has not changed. God's goodness is still there. God's love is still there. God's care and warmth for his people has not and will never change. But in our lives, the struggles and difficulties sometimes cause us to think that. And Richard Baxter makes the powerful point, it is never God who has changed. It is never the Lord that is altered. It's us. Some people say, Lord, I just don't feel like you're close to me anymore. I mean, I haven't been reading my Bible. I haven't been praying. I haven't been thinking of the things of you. I've been living how I want. I've been living in sin. But why aren't you close to me, God? So often we're very quick to blame God. But the reality is our God not a constant? Is he not unchanging? And verse 17 makes it even clearer. If you needed it to be any clearer, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Our God is the same. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. The God who has lavished us with so much remains the unchanging God who is the same forever. If you could trust him in the past, you can trust him today. And for tomorrow, I know I can trust my God. And then the final thing I want us to look at before I close is I want us to consider the gifted, those who have received the gift that God has given. Who are the recipients of God's gift? Verse 18. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Some people might consider verse 18 to be a continuation of the creation picture, but again, I don't think that's the case. I think here it is evident that our God is a saving God. Our God saves and redeems. And that which is freely given to us is salvation. And I absolutely love the phrasing in verse 18. Of his own will, he brought us forth by the word of truth. The gift of salvation is given by God. It is not earned. It's not deserved. We don't deserve to be saved. We don't deserve God's love or care, but it is given. The gospel of Jesus Christ, what he has done upon the cross, the word of truth, truth about who God is, truth concerning him, has been given to us because God wanted to. Again, listen to this quote by a great theologian. Even men who are generous, that's a good way to start, isn't it? Even men who are generous need to have their generosity excited. They will need to be waited upon. Appeals will be laid before them or requests for money. They must sometimes be pressed. An example must lead them on. You hear that, don't you, about people who have lots of money. They don't just freely give their money. They often have to hear a really sad story before something emotionally moves them. There needs to be an appeal before they respond. And this is what this theologian says. But of his own will, God did to us all that has been done without any incentive or prompting, moved only by himself, because he delighteth in mercy, because his name and his nature are love, because evermore, like the sun, it is natural to him to distribute the beams of his eternal grace. Our salvation is given to us. If you're a Christian here this morning, guess what? You do not deserve it. But it is given to you. Not because we've sat for hours upon hours saying, God, please forgive me, please forgive me, please, please, please. Children sometimes try that, don't they? I don't think it ever works. But I know I tried it when I was a child. If I wanted something, I would just say please 100 times, as fast as I could, hoping that would change my parents' opinion. It never worked. It just annoyed them. But we've not done that to God, have we? We've not had to beg God. We have not had to convince God of his own will. It was always God's plan to redeem and to rescue and to save. Since before time existed, God knew in his mind, the triune God knew that he would save his people of his own will. He decided. And I think that's where John 3:16 is so powerful. For God so loved the world that he sent his Son. He sent of his will. He sent because he wants to save and redeem. He sent his Son because he will bring life. He wasn't cajoled. He wasn't forced. He didn't need to be convinced. This is the God that we worship. A God whose nature is so loving and merciful that he decided himself, these people who reject me, these people who despise me, I will love. I will save. I will provide a way for them to know me. I will send the greatest gift there can ever be. And then this passage ends by talking about the first fruits. And there's lots of things here, including about how God views us as the first fruits. There's lots of things here about how precious we are in the eyes of God. But also the reality is that the book of James is written to the first century believers. The book of James is written to the first century Christians, those who have just been saved. And so here it might be an element of James writing to those who have come to know salvation in Jesus Christ first. And it's wonderful that, and it's glorious. But what is equally wonderful and glorious? Thousands of years later, the gospel is still transforming lives. Thousands of years later, God has not stopped moving and awakening in the hearts of his people a desire and love to serve him. God has not stopped using the gospel to transform people. Thousands of years later, and the Church of Jesus Christ is growing and growing and growing. More and more people are being saved and are accepting this gift. God is regenerating more and more people. Thousands of years later, what is our hope in this God? Our hope is that we, who through God's help have received the gift that the giver has given, that we would see many more people come to know this gift. Thousands of years later, friends, it is the same gift, the same God saving people today. Our God is still at work. Amen.